Muntu wange nkwebaza okubanga okyagoberera muzungu David Kadongokamu music analyst. Nkusaba nti weeyongere okubeera nga osubscribinga, sharinga, commentinga, then ku Facebook era nayo tu following, ne ku TikTok. Gwe ayagala music ono osobola okunsanga e Kasubi ku Basookakwavula stage ku tterekero lyaffe ery'emboozi ya Kadongokamu Music Library and History Center. Gwe ayagala ekisingakaawo osobola otusanga ku kadongokamumusic.org, ku eyo ye website ya Kadongokamu Heritage Center and Music Hall of Fame. Tugezaako okulafuwano okulaba nga music ono tumukuuma nga akyalimu ensawo. Oba oliawo n'abaana abalijja mu myaka gy'omumaaso eyo babeere nga bategeera nti ebintu bino weebiri. Tetugenda komaawo, tuteekere ne bannaffe abalambuzi abava mu mawanga g'abakyeruppe, amawanga ag'enjawulo, okubeera nga bajja basomeko oba balabeko ebintu wano weebyakolebwa. Kale nkusaba nti genda mu maaso nga okola bwotyo. Kikaya College and Vocational School webali nnyo okulaba nga ensonga zino zikutuukako. Basangibwa ali ebulenga ku 7. Balina dene boarding arts ne sciences. Dene ali ku vocational, buli kosi y'omutwe oba omusomo gw'omutwe baguddukanya. Kale nkugamba nti twalayo omwana bamubangule. Dene waliwo bano abato abatandikiriza obulamu bw'ensi batwale ku Twinex International wali e Bulaga kulwe Mitiana, era mwami Mubiru Charles y'omu aliawo okubeera nga akwasaganya. Omwami oyo mwagazi nnyo wa Kadongokamu era nga alina enteekateeka nnyingi eri Kadongokamu. Ku ssomero lye yakifuula kyatteeka buli mwaka bakola ennyimba 9 nga za Kadongokamu, abaana basomese bannaabwe ate ayagaliza. Kale n'olwaleero bwentyo wendabise. Olunaku olwaleero mpise ne muganda wange ankyaliddeko wano. Gwe gusoose naye oba oliawo mwe abasinga guyinza okubanga gwe mulundi gwammwe ogusoose okubanga mutulaba. Tugenda kubanga tunyumya ebintu bingi, tugenda kyusangamu olulimi, tugatte Oluzungu, tugatte n'Oluganda, kubanga okusinga ye ate ategeera luli olw'abakyeruppe. Nsaba agenda tubuuzaako. Yes, Mr. Mo. Nice to meet you too. Muzungu David, aka Kadongokamu music analyst, and if I talk about Kadongokamu, I'm sure you understand that Kadongokamu is Ugandan country music. I would love you to say anything to introduce yourself to our viewers.
Let me do that. My name is Michiel van Oosterhout. I'm a Dutchman. I was born in the Netherlands. I came to Uganda in 2001 and I've been living here ever since. I've always been a big music lover, even when I was living in the Netherlands. I had an uncle who lived in Congo for 50 years and he would always come home every 4 years with big stories about Africa, specifically about Congo, of course. And so as a child growing up, that always inspired me. And so when I became an older man, I started making journeys to Africa and collecting African music. And when I came to live in Uganda, I continued that. And
When was your first time to come to Africa?
Yeah, the first time was in 1993. I went to Ghana, West Africa. That was the first time. And that time I had never really heard African music, but I was there for 2 months and everywhere there was African music. There was Alpha Blondy, who had just released his master album Masada, and I was immediately taken in by that music and by the atmosphere around it, and the happiness that music shows. Even though I know that sometimes lyrics are not happy, but the tune might still sound happy. But I think what attracted me first were these rhythms, these danceable rhythms.
Okay. During your time in Ghana, did you get a chance of knowing the real name for their country music? Like as it is in Uganda, that it is called Kadongokamu?
I knew that one of the major styles there was high life music. High life music, which was also big in Nigeria, but also in Ghana it was very big. So high life was kind of the name that catches a lot of styles almost, because of course there are traditional styles, and this high life style incorporated elements of these other styles. So sometimes it's difficult to just put one name onto something. I think the same applies to Kadongokamu. The early Kadongokamu from the 60s and 70s was just a guitar and a voice, but nowadays it's all band, and so these styles evolve and new elements are added, but still they will call it Kadongokamu.
Kadongokamu. Okay, kati omukulu abadde atugamba nti naye waffe wano mu myaka gy'enkaaga n'ensanvu twamuyitanga Kadongokamu kubanga ebiseera ebisinga twali tutambulira ku rhythm eya gita, naye kati we gutuuse ensangi zino nti osanga ebivuga bingi kati yafukanga band. So Mr. Mo, if I'm to ask, if you go back to Netherlands, do you have country music?
It's not really, we don't call it country music. I mean, country music is really a style that we associate with America.
Yes.
So country music, really, we think it comes from there. But country music is kind of almost a kind of folk music, almost, the traditional music of a country.
Yeah, that's where we originated from.
Yeah.
We originated from folk music. Then when it went on developing, we came to country music. And we mixed folk and modern music of the late 50s, 60s, 70s.
In Netherlands, we of course also had a similar evolution of music, and I think we also had we had folk music, you know. Every part of the Netherlands had a different style, and because even though there were not different tribes in my country, but still you had the people in the west were definitely very different than the people in the south or the people in the north. So also the music reflects those differences, be it in the way they sing, because although we all speak Dutch, there's lots of different Dutch accents, so not the Dutch in the south doesn't sound the same as the Dutch in the west. There's a very big difference. Sometimes even somebody from the west might not understand all the words that a person in the south speaks in the same language. So there's very different accents. So also the folk music that was represented, because the folk music was also something to be proud of. And just like you have here, that the Baganda region is kind of the most important region and the strongest economically and all that. The same we had in the Netherlands. The western part of the Netherlands was really the rich part.
So western part of Netherlands is composed by which counties?
There are 12 provinces in the Netherlands, and the west is 3 provinces of the 12. The remaining provinces for a long time were kind of under the thumb of those 3 provinces. So people in the south, up to let's say 1900, the south didn't even have a representative in parliament, because the people in the west considered the people in the south to be too stupid for that. You know? Now I'm saying it very in a generalizing way. I mean, there's much more to it. You know, I'm not trying to vilify the people in the west that they are bad people, but the fact remains that those people in the west, they were the ones who mostly went out with ships and conquered the world. But these other provinces, those people, they also lived like very poor peasants in a not so nice reality.
So baganda bange, Mr. Mo ekintu kyagezaako tunnyonnyola. Tulina ebintu bye tuyinza okulaba ng'ebyobusosoze. Obusosoze wano mu mawanga weebuli nti ogenda n'owulira nti abasoga bategeerera ku gundi, abo baliwe bati, nti kati kyakulagako nti abali mu Western Province nga batwala abali mu Eastern, nti bo okutegeera kwabwe kwa njawulo, era nga ne kubakola mirimu bakola emirimu gino gino be bakakaalukana, so nga ne mu Parliament okukiika tebakiika. Kyekintu kyagezaako okutulaga, naye tukyali ne Mr. Mo ava Netherlands, tulina emboozi mpanvu ey'okubeera nga tunyumya naye. So Mr. Mo, do you have grandfathers for your music in Netherlands?
Definitely. We also have artists that started making music in the 60s that are definitely, we consider them to be the fathers, the Moses Matovus of the Netherlands.
The Moses Matovu of the Netherlands.
Yeah. We have a band called The Golden Earring, which was a band that also succeeded in getting a #1 hit in America. Now, of course, you know, for a small little tiny country like the Netherlands, you know, to get a hit in that enormously big country, United States of America. That was a really big thing. So at the end of the 1960s, they succeeded in getting a number hit there, and of course, we, you know, the Dutch people were very proud of that, and so of course we consider those people. And they're not the only ones. I can't just say. I mean, it's the same with Moses Matovu. It's very easy to give Moses Matovu the title of being the grandfather of all music, but there's also Tony Senkebedje. There is all kinds of other names. Christopher Sepaduka, although he's not alive anymore, but there's always more. But because Moses Matovu is still active and still making music, yes, it is the smartest thing to call him the grandfather, because he's still with us and he can still teach us something.
Actually, what you are talking about, it is true. And I was some time back I was talking to some Ugandan musicians that why is it that you can't get a heir to Christopher Sebaduka, the grandfather of Ugandan country music? Why can't you? Because there are those whom he made music with and they are still alive.
Yeah, so I think it would be the right honor to give to Christopher Sebaduka. I mean, I definitely see him, me personally, see him as the father of Kadongokamu, even though they also talk about Eli Wamala, but Eli Wamala wrote a lot of other songs that were totally not in the Kadongokamu style, and Christopher Sebaduka stuck to it and he kept on making these records. Maybe sometimes he made some songs with a band, but that's very rare. There was, in 1968, he made a few records for a Ugandan label called All Hits, and I think it was run by a Greek person, because the records were printed in Greece and then they were flown back. But on those songs he also has a bass guitar there and he has a drum there, and so sometimes Christopher Sebaduka would, you know, go astray a bit from his real style.
Yeah.
But he's definitely the king of Kadongokamu. I mean,
in Uganda. Kale baganda bange nkyali ne Mr. Mo, omwami ono muwandiisi awandiika ku music nga omulimo guno agukoledde kyenkana emyaka kati nga 19 ng'ali wano akoze ebitabo, awandiise ebitabo ebyenjawulo. Nfunye omukisa ne andeetedde ekitabo kino bakiyita The Soul of Uganda Through Song. When did you release this?
I released it 2 years ago, but it took me like 4 years to write. So there was a lot of research going into it. I interviewed probably 25 old musicians. I got a lot of information from the library at Makerere University, finding articles on musicians, be they Kadongokamu, be they the more rumba style bands, the Ugandan rumba style bands, traditional musicians. So I found lots of articles between 1962 and 79 about Ugandan music, and based on that I could also, of course, use a lot of that information in this book. And the book is actually, it's not only about music. I'm looking at song lyrics in this book that were made by Ugandan artists, and I was looking especially for songs that had a political meaning, that had a social meaning, a moral meaning. Let's say Idi Amin, he banned the miniskirt. Immediately there were artists making songs about the miniskirt. So I was very interested in then listening to those songs about the miniskirt, and my very good friend Mike Musoke translated these songs for me, and because of that I could understand the real meaning of these songs. And it also gives you a good indication of how people were thinking about the miniskirt. I mean, of course there were liberal people in the 1970s that said, why can't we allow our women to wear miniskirt? You know, we're living in a modern day and age. But others said, no, this is terrible, we have to stop this, this is a curse for our children and they're going to go astray. And so Idi Amin, I guess, was lucky that he also had a very conservative mindset. And so I guess to stay in power, he also made a bit use of that, you know, by by seeing like, but these older people, they're a bit more conservative, they are annoyed by the miniskirt, and also proclaim it's bad, that, you know, it's immoral and this and that. That's something we can discuss for hours about. I mean, is it immoral or not immoral? You know, you have your opinion, I have my opinion. But that is what I try to do with this book, to somehow see the political significance of the songs.
Okay. What did it cost you to make this book?
Well, it cost me a lot of time. I think it took me like 2 years to write. Not that I was constantly working on it. I had to do other things to make money to survive. But of course, the translations, I had to pay for the translations. So that is definitely a direct cost I made. And that
I'm sure I too myself, I was paid by you.
Yeah, also. So that is the way I did that, because I feel if somebody's working, I have to pay him. I cannot ask anybody to do something for me for free. But it also means indeed that when you translate like 200 songs, that was probably like 1.5 million that I spent on only having the translations done. And I was sitting behind typing it out. So I was still putting a lot of effort into getting these songs translated also.
I remember I was paid 150 because I worked on 3 articles. There was Mzee Matia Kakomilize,
Hani Sensua,
Professor Nington Manyi Sensua, and Salongo Deogrosia Sebuguzi. Did you, of recent, Deogrosia Sebuguzi was operated? I'm not sure whether you are aware of that.
No, I was not aware of that.
He was operated, but now he's okay. He resumed working.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Then
because he was a very nice man.
Mzee Matia Kakomilizi was also there in Bwais, trying to make life meet ends. Professor Nington Manyi Sensua was with him on Valentine's Day.
Nice.
He's having some challenges.
All 3 very nice musicians, they have really left a mark on the Ugandan music scene. Then maybe especially Matia Kakomilizi, he has really an amazing voice.
If we are to talk about Ugandan country music, I wonder why people no longer talk about, they either no longer or don't talk about Matia Kakomilizi as being pioneers of our country music. Was there right from the beginning. You remember when we were with him, it's Kakomilizi, Bernardine Subuga, and Paulo Damulira, who formed the first Ugandan country music group. Uganda
like an organization.
Yes, Uganda picking guitarists. Then from there they went on to open up talks with the government of Idi Amin by then, to start Kadongokamu and Cultural Company, which lasted for almost 9 years. But I wonder why people doesn't talk about him. When we come to places, people praise others. You remember how he narrated his arrest. Anyway,
maybe it could have something to do with that, you know, that maybe he was playing for Idi Amin. You know, of course, there's always politically some people not happy that somebody's playing for Idi Amin, praising him in songs. But it's not only Matia Kakomilizi, there's very many artists in those days. Fred Mazagazi was praising Idi Amin, the Cranes were praising him, almost everybody had to. But they were forced to, also partly maybe. You know?
The Cranes band. In the beginning, they praised him. Then after some few years, things went astray, which even forced some of the members to flee out of the country. Then their band leader, Jessica Siliv.
Well, he was not the band leader, but he was definitely an important member, composer. He was killed.
Abducted.
And killed.
And killed.
Very serious.
His girlfriend, Sarah Cholaba, was taken away from him and married Idi Amin Dada. Kati baganda bange we tuli omwami ono yakola olutambi lwe yayita Bwana Jogo, The Ballads of Jesse Kasilivu. When were we at National Theatre?
That was in 2019 that film, Bwana Jogo, premiered at the National Theatre.
Yes, I was there with the late Bernardine
Sabuga. And so you also saw the Cranes performing before the show, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a very special evening, because the Cranes in that grouping had not been playing together for 45 years. So, I mean, of course, these guys, they know each other and they must have been playing with Afrigo, but not very specifically that they say, okay, and now we play like the Cranes and we will try and play with minimal instruments the way we used to do it in the 70s. So they didn't have a big band behind them. They were just with 5 people, and in that way they represented that sound of the Cranes of those days the best, and that was a very special evening.
So baganda bange nti omukulu we batuukanga the Cranes band we yafuna obuzibu n'ejjeno Idi Amin Dada, abasajja abo abamu baawalirizibwa okubeera nga badduka wano bagende ebunanjira banoonye obulamu. We batyo bagenda mu ggwanga lya Kenya, eyo ne bakolerayo entambi. Do you remember some of the albums they made from Kenya?
The Cranes?
Yeah, like
they only made one album.
What's Love?
Yeah, but those were singles, those were small records. They made at least 25 singles over their whole career. It started in 65 and it ended in 75. So they made at least 25 to 30 small records, and they made one big record, like a 33.
Okay, bantu bange, nkyali ne Mr. Mo, omuwandiisi w'ebitabo, omuwandiisi we films, naddala okusinga documentaries ezikwata ku music waffe. Mbagambye nti yakola olutambi olwo Bwana Jogo, The Ballads of Jesse Kasilivu. Omwami oyo yali muyimbi mu the Cranes band, naye oluvannyuma baafuna obuzibu n'ejjeno Idi Amin Dada, era bw'atyo yawambibwa ku kino ekibuzibwa abayimbi kye tulaba, bw'atyo teyaddamu kulabika, ne girlfriend we amanyiddwa nga Sala Kyolaba, bw'atyo n'atwalibwa era n'afuuka omukyala wa Idi Amin Dada. Yasser Arafat eyali Ssaabaminisita wa Palestine ye yali best man ku mukolo ogw'okuwasa omukyala oyo Sala Kyolaba. When I was watching your documentary, the family of Jesse Kasilivu say that Sala Kyolaba went when she was pregnant for Jesse. Is that true?
Nobody knows 100%. We can only find out if we would do DNA testing, I guess, because this is something. But this is what the family claims. The family of Jesse Kasilivu. There is, and it's all also written in this book. There's a whole chapter on Sala Kyolaba and Jesse Kasilivu and Idi Amin and what happened to them. So there's the movie, but there's also a big chapter in this book which goes a little bit further than the film maybe. But what I found out with my research is that at a certain moment Sarah came to the family of Jesse Kasilivu saying, I am pregnant of your son's child, and then she also officially got introduced to the family. You know the way this goes here in Baganda culture. The moment the woman really comes to your family and even talks about a child that she has, that is almost the Kwanjula kind of style of, even though there was no big celebration, but I think it was a pre-talk before a possible Kwanjula. And so the family of Jesse Kasilivu, and Jesse was also there, we're presuming like, so next step will be marriage.
Yeah, because I saw the sister of Jesse Gita Kasiliv saying that Sarah Cholaba approached her and told her about that story, and she emphasized the sister to Jesse not to say it anywhere, because at the moment she produces that, the giant would come.
Yeah, and the thing is that 2 weeks before Jesse was killed, his brother was also killed.
Oh, sorry.
His brother was running a bar in Wankukulukulu.
Wankulukuku.
You know how to say it better than me.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks before the death of Jesse, the brother was also killed. So nobody ever talks about that because the brother is not famous. And Jesse Kasirivu, of course, became a famous name because of him already being famous as a musician. And also because he dared to compete with Idi Amin over a woman. And so that's also something that people should not forget, that also brother was killed. So was there a correlation between the killing of the brother and Jesse Kasirivu? Was maybe the killing of the brother a warning to Jesse Kasirivu, and now watch out?
Watch out.
This story is not yet finished, David. I mean, there still needs to be more research done. What I did by making this film and writing this book, all I'm trying to do is push people in Uganda here, people that are also very interested like you in the history of Uganda, in music of Uganda, to keep on digging, because there's much more to the story. That story of Jesse Kasirivu is not yet completely told.
Okay.
So who knows, you might be able to find the real truth.
Should it be the atmosphere between the Cranes band and the government that led to the formation of Afrigo?
I think what happened was that the Cranes, they were about to go and record an album in Kenya. This was 1974, and they had everything ready to go and do this. They had already printed the cover of the album.
Yes.
Where you see Jesse Kasirivu there. If you turn the cover around, there's even a song called "Don't Blackmail Me" by Jesse Kasirivu.
Telling Idi Amin.
Who else? You know, I mean, somehow he felt being blackmailed and he put it in a song. Now what happens in between them go or they are planning to go and record, but before they can record, on the 4th of August 1974, Jesse Kasirivu gets arrested in front of his home. He's dragged, he's pushed in in the back of a Peugeot in the boot, the way that used to happen in those days, driven off, and since then nobody ever heard of him anymore. Although, of course, people started talking with the State Research Bureau agents, and slowly they figured out, you know, what had happened. They said, like, you know, if you keep on asking, the same thing will happen to you as what happened with Jesse Kasirivu. So, if that is what you get to hear, then what is the conclusion?
Do you know what I've remembered? Oh, we need to plan. Meet Mzee Matia Kakumilize. We go to Mengo Torture Chamber. And Mengo Torture Chamber, of course, was tortured from there when he was abducted from Shauri Yako, taken to CPS, from CPS Nairomashon, then from Nairomashon was taken to Mengo Torture Chamber. And in the story of Jesse Gita Kasiliv, there are allegations that he was also tortured from Mengo Torture Chambers. We need to pay a visit. We need to pay a visit, make an interview with those people. We go with Kakumilizi. Maybe he will direct us, he will tell us.
Yeah, the good thing is that when you bring people to such important places, even though they're horrible places in the past, it might bring some memory back that you cannot that he might not be able to give if you just sit with him in a bar or you're just sitting with him in his living room. But if you bring somebody to the dramatic reality of those days, we humans, our brains start thinking differently, you know. So that's why that is often a very good tactic to find more information. But I think the main thing is it's not only about bringing them to certain places. The main thing is just to keep on asking questions to these older people, because they still know a lot, and you can still figure out a lot of these things that happened in the past and come to a real conclusion that this is really what happened. And I think the people of now also deserve to know, but also the people that lived in those days and who had to go through all these painful experiences and who are being shut down, you know, told keep your mouth shut, don't ask any questions, you know, or we do something to you. That is a way of handling people that is not correct. You know, we're living in a democratic state here. People should be treated properly. So that's why people of now have to learn from their mistakes in the past, and that's why it's very good to keep on reciting history and digging deeper, even though it might be painful sometimes for some people.
Yeah, I got a chance. I talked with him, and he said that once you are ready, I'm around.
That's nice. I would love to meet Matieka community again.
Maybe what I'm going to do, I'm going to arrange. We have our cameraman, MC Benoit. He's also a journalist. By the way, what you didn't tell people that we are journalists.
We're all journalists. That's true.
He's a Dutch Jan. I'm a Ugandan Jan. He's a Ugandan Jan.
Yeah.
Though for him is another genres. For us, we're interested in the music.
Yeah, that's true.
The other. So after Crane's band, which band replaced Crane's?
It was at first Afrego Black Power. Okay. So that was the name that Moses Matovu and Charles Sechanzi and I think Jeff Sawawa and all of them together came up with. They stopped the Cranes because it was, you know, there had been too much trouble with Jesse Kaserivu. I think they were all a bit scared. Tony Sengebeji fled to Kenya. So they realized we have to come up with another name, we have to have a different identity so that they don't associate us too much with that issue, because that might have brought trouble for them also. So that's why I think they chose that name. I think they used that name for, I think they made like 3 small records under that name. Then the next records they released were under the name Afrigo. Yeah, Afrigo Band.
Afrigo Band. But between Afrigo and the African Black Powers, there was African Go. Though when we were off camera, you told me they didn't make any record under African Go.
No.
So then when Crane's band went off, there was Thames Band.
Thames Band, but they were already there even earlier. The Thames Band started in 1972. Yeah, they were like the first band that also brought out an LP, a big record, so they were very proud of that.
Mr. Mo, we have this gentleman. He's never, I've never got a chance of hearing anyone talking about him. For me, I may call him the grandfather of band music in Uganda, Israel Magembe.
Israel Magembe, yeah, that's also.
Because for him, he was there in the 40s.
Yeah.
And he was releasing
music in the 50s.
Yeah, 40s, 50s.
Yeah. He went to Congo to learn the rumba style from the big guys, Franco, Taboulé, Grand Calais. I mean, he was around those people. I don't know if he was always playing with them, but he must have played with them once or twice. But definitely he learned a lot from there. He stayed there a couple of years, and then there was another Ugandan artist called Charles Senkatuka. And he also spent a lot of time there, so I think Israel Magembe must have related to him also. But Charles Senkatuka kind of stayed in Congo, and Israel Magembe came back.
Then when he came back, he started that top 10 band. At Chegunda nightclub.
Yeah, and Kampala Wanderers also.
Which later became Susanna.
Yeah.
Susanna nightclub. Yeah. Actually, where I don't know whether you've ever got a chance of going to where Susanna was, but if you get a chance of going to Nakulabye, there is a club called La Bamba Nakulabye.
Yeah.
So that's where Susanna was.
Okay.
And now.
So the original building is still there?
No.
No, but just the spot where it was?
Yeah, it was demolished. I got a chance of going to change production of Charles Sonko.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in Mondeva. Now there is a clinic.
Yeah,
where it was, they opened up a clinic.
But at least the building is still there.
Yeah, the building is there.
And that's nice, kind of. At least then you still see some remnants of something, you know. But when the building is completely gone, then it becomes not so very interesting anymore, because then you cannot imagine anymore. So how did Susanna Club look like? But if that building is completely gone and they put some 3-story building there, then. But there's certain buildings still there. I mean, there used to be a studio, Peacock Studio in Katwe. It's still there.
Peacock Studio was Edmond Batte.
Yeah, at Mbate.
Yeah.
So that one's still there. And then, of course, I mean, the studio of Moses Matovu, that one is also from the beginning of the 80s. That one is still there. So there's a few of these gems, you know, buildings that belonged to, and also Kasiriwuka. That one, where he used to sell his tapes from. Very old Indian style building opposite of the old park. That building is still there, although he's not selling any tapes anymore. But I remember going in there and buying tapes, and you know, somehow, you know, building also matters. It's nice, you know, to see a nice building and to.
I'm going to ask you this question. What's the system there in Netherlands? Because for us, we found that when another generation comes, things of the past generation goes off. Like now you can't find any recording studios which used to record music in the past. And when you go to countries like US, more so in Nashville, the city music, you find there country music museums, meaning they'll put things to preserve their music, their heritage. Do you have heritage centers in Netherlands?
Definitely. Yeah, we also have museums that really focus on the music of the Netherlands. We do have them,
Which logic or magic have you used to preserve your country music or your music of the late?
Yeah, there's not really any logic to it. I mean, it's just, I think, important to preserve, because if you don't assemble the elements that made your music the way it is today, then nobody can reflect back and say like, so how did I come here? Why am I now this big star in Uganda? B.I. Bibi Cool or Bobby Wine or whatever, Chameleon. I mean, where does that come from? They have been influenced by.
Okay, baganda bange nchali ne muganda wange Mr. Mo musajja munamawulire nga bwendi anoonyereza ku music era nga wolaba muzungu David kyekyo kye bagamba nti ennyonyi ezifaananya ebyoya zitera okubeera nga zibuukira wamu. Kati nange yensonga lwaki tusisinkanye wano. Here in Uganda we have a say, ebinyonyi ebyekikula ekimu bibuukira wamu, birds of the same feather fuse together. Why am I bringing that? You are interested in research. I think you are doing two. You do search and research, not so?
Sorry, research and?
Search.
Search, yeah, but that's the same thing, I think. Research, no. Searching.
Searching. At times, you are the one who is starting that. You are putting into place, either in print, it wasn't there. You took your time to go and look for it from the people bearing information about it.
Definitely.
Then, if I'm to make research, I make research from already a made article. So me and you, we do both search and research.
True. Yeah.
And after putting this into place, other people makes research out of
Our
work.
research.
Yes, our search.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, Mr. Mo, we were still talking about heritage centers in Netherlands. The logical magic you use to preserve yours. And I'm going to bring this question to you. Why is it that here in Uganda we don't have any heritage center for our music?
Yeah, we might not have it for our music, but we have, of course, heritage centers. There are museums here in Uganda. It's not that we don't have them. That is maybe too few. I would say there should be more. I mean, the ones that we have, I think they are doing a good job. Look at Uganda Museum, I think they're doing a good job. There's also some private museums that are doing good job.
Have you, one day I saw you at Uganda Museum. Is there a sector for Ugandan music?
What they do have a small record collection there. Yeah, and I think and those are quite special records. They are 78s. You have in the records, you know, up to the 1960s, the records were called 78s.
Okay, let me
shellac
get
records.
Let me get a copy.
Yeah. Now this is a 33. So before they started producing these ones in 1962,
yes,
there was a smaller version that went as far as this, and they would call them 78s.
78.
And they were made of different material that could break very easily. If I would like do like this, it could already break. Now with this one, you know, it's very flexible. It doesn't. You're not supposed to touch it here, but I mean, it cannot harm too much. So this one is much more flexible, and that's why this was a very good invention. I think even the inventor of these records, there's also a Dutch connection with my country.
Yeah.
So I think also Philips, the Philips factory, was involved in the development of these records, and then later on of the cassette tapes. Yeah, but this is definitely.
Have some more.
And you have the small ones, maybe.
No, the small ones are for Robert.
Hey.
Yeah, for me, I have those.
Yeah, Motown. Feeling alright. Yeah. You know, what I've noticed is that indeed in Uganda in the 1970s, when these records were mostly bought, that music from guys like James Brown and the Temptations and soul music and funk music was very popular here in Uganda. A lot of people would buy those records.
Yes.
But of course there were also African records, because here I definitely see an African one, Pepe Kale,
That's
from
Pepe
Congo.
From Congo.
So, there were, you know, Franco Rochereau, the most important Congolese musicians were very popular in Uganda. And then of course most of it was music from Uganda. If you go, you know, I found a lot of top 10s, you know, that every week or every 2 weeks.
Yes, every week they had that list of those songs which made the top 10 list.
Yeah, so that meant like the top 10 is the best sold records usually. I mean, it's based upon sales often. So the newspapers would go to some record shop in Kampala and ask them, so which song sold the most, and then they could make that list. And I was able to find maybe 50, 60 top 10s in different newspapers, through which you can get an idea, you know, about what was the most popular. And you can really see that 80% of the songs that ended up in the top 10 were Ugandan songs.
Okay, Mr. Mo, you said when you went at Uganda National Museum, you found 78 records.
Yeah.
Do you think that only is enough for Uganda?
No, because that's very small collection. I mean, they had maybe 40 records. If you go to Radio Uganda, you will find many more 78s and 45s.
And if it's making a heritage, do you think they only need to concentrate on records? if they are making heritage of Ugandan music and Uganda Museum?
No, also
Do you
tapes.
think, yes, do you think they have made enough coverage for we who are interested in music or for the generation which will come later?
Yeah, that is a question that's difficult to answer now, how the future generation is going to react. You know, with this kind of thing, with preservation, you should not be too focused on, do people want it? Oh, they don't want to? Oh, let's not do it. I mean, you have to do it anyhow. It is very important to preserve your heritage. That means that when you are Lugbara and there are certain things that are important in Lugbara culture, be they drums, be they whatever it is, you know, you should preserve these things and don't let them just rot away. And
I'm going to ask you another question, because for me, I've never got a chance of going to National Museum, and maybe you never know, even I'll never get a chance of going there. Because music, okay, apart from records, what other items do they have there for Ugandan music?
yeah, now the records are not in their museum really. They are just kept there and they're not being shown to people. What you see there is all the cultures of Uganda. That is what's being exposed there. So these records, that is something modern. So it doesn't really fit in that museum, but that museum was of course thinking in the 60s and in the 50s, we will grow bigger, so we will have different departments, whereby we will also have exhibitions of modernity. And good enough, recently there was an exhibition about old technology. And there they did show record players, they did play these records, so the people that came there, they could taste that, because the younger generation, like your generation, they've never had a record in their hand. You, because you are very interested.
Yes.
But other young men or women, they have no clue what these things
there
are.
are those who are older than me,
And
who
also don't
haven't-
know.
who haven't yet got a chance.
Yeah, the thing is that they stopped making records around 86. And then the CD came in.
The tapes.
No. Well, okay. I mean, the tapes had already started a bit earlier, or a bit earlier, at the end of the 70s. So in the 1980s, you could all buy tapes or records, and then the CD came, and the CD within 10 years pushed all the tapes away, because in 2001 and 2 you could still buy tapes in Uganda in shops, but in 2003 almost all these shops were gone.
Were gone,
And everything was now put in a computer.
Due to the introduction of computer and CDs.
Yeah, and MP3s.
So baganda bange, tukyali ne Mr. Mo, tukyanyumya emboozi mpitirivu. Mr. Mo akoze wano ebintu bingi mu Ugandan music industry, naddala ffe okusinga obwetaavu bwaffe buli ku music yafuluma wakati w'emyaka gya 5 okutuuka ano 8 nga giggwako. Kale tuyinza okujja ano mu 2000, naye okusinga ate ye ali ku music oli ow'amayinja. Music oyo we yafulumira ebiseera ebyo yali ne identity emu, nga wozanya music ava mu US n'okwata music wa Kadongokamu owa wano ow'emyaka gy'enkaaga n'otuuza lyrics mu instrumento ya America ng'oluyimba olwo lusobola okufollowinga. Is that true?
You have to ask me in English.
Yeah, I asked you in English. I was telling them that during the 60s, country music had an identity.
Yeah.
And was uniform. So if you go on to remove lyrics from a US country music record and you bring in the instruments of Ugandan country music, those things could flow.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Kadongokamu music which started in the 50s with Christopher
was uniform.
And I think nobody knows exactly, even your American research friend doesn't know it exactly.
David Pierce.
Yeah, he also doesn't know exactly. Like some people say it came with the train, that some musician from Nairobi came to Kampala and somehow brought a guitar, and others say it's because of the war, the Second World War. There were Africans serving in the British Army, and of course the British did have the guitar, so that's how also Ugandan musicians started playing the guitar, because they were in the army. And
should I say that the recording of those days was unique?
Yeah, I think it was technically also.
Because I've got a chance of doing that. You get a song for Europeans, and then you bring in the lyrics for a Ugandan artist of those days. Those things could flow, and I'm still wondering the logic behind, because the thing was uniform from here to there.
Yeah. Definitely,
unlike these days.
Yeah, definitely the few points that I already mentioned are, I think, the reason why the guitar was introduced. But then how do you play the guitar? Because I think the Ugandan Kadongokamu artists were not playing it exactly like Hank Williams, or what's the other guy that Reeves, Jim Reeves. I mean,
talk about Hank Williams.
I don't know so much about these guys. All I know is that they were very famous in America, and that they were also very popular in Uganda, because again, when I look at the top 10s that I photographed, those two quite often feature also in the Ugandan top 10.
Then, what does make someone to be a legend? Because Hank Williams, he made 31 records. He died at 29 years.
Yeah.
And he's taken as one of the grands of country music in the US.
Yeah.
And then there are those Jimmy Cliff, who made records more than him. What does it take for someone to be a legend?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. What makes somebody a legend? It's not because somebody's old and made music 40 years ago, that is why you're a legend. You're also a legend because throughout the years you've made an impact, not just musically but also socially. And if you look at the members of the Cranes, that goes beyond just making nice music. I mean, these people have also put their ear to the ground and they listened to the sentiment of the people, isn't it? So they are a reflection of what people feel. And especially the Kadongokamu artists are really good at that. They really put their ear on the ground and they listen all the Wolokoso and all the things that are going on amongst ordinary people, and they translate that into a lyric, And so that's why I have claimed also in my book that musicians...
Mr. Matugamba, enjawulo eri ku basajja aba Kadongokamu nti batwala obudde ne badda eno mu bantu ne bawuliriza ebyo ebikola ki ebitambula ne batuukirira abantu ab'enjawulo nti we bamala okugira ebintu ebyo olwo ne babikwata ne bakola ki ne babizza mu mboozi ffe gye tugenda ne tunyumirwa. So Mr. Mo, before the break, I had a question about Ugandan heritage. What do we need to do?
What we need to do is what we're already doing, what I'm doing, what you're doing. Even though there's very little money in it, but at least we are preserving, we are collecting information, we are noting it down. I mean, look at the table in front of us. I mean, if I look at all these tapes, what I see is a treasure.
A treasure.
That's what I see. It might be that most of these tapes that you have the MP3 files on your computer, and that maybe other music sellers also have that. Although I doubt it, because I think there's definitely albums here that you might not have digitized yet. And so what I am always suggesting...
All of them, they are digitized.
Oh, they're all digitized.
Apart from this, because a number of people are having this album of Vincent Mwonge. I don't know whether you know Vincent Mwonge.
Yeah.
He was in Entebbe Guitar Singers, but right now he is in Masaka. Yeah, he went to farming.
Okay.
He's staying with his family, who was in Entebbe Guitar Singers, attend of Sebata and Bazira Guitar Singers.
But what I'm talking about is that even though you have the MP3 files, there's also the picture.
Okay.
There's also the cover of this album.
I have the covers.
And that is also something very historic, because you can feel that this is old. You can feel that in those days they put an effort to give you a reasonably good product. If you compare that with the tapes that were made at the end of the 90s, the paper had become slippery and thin and cheap.
The paper was hard. The covers of those days were hard.
Yeah.
For example, this is Hamani Basude 1987, and this is 1978.
Yeah. Look at that.
This is his first album.
Yeah, wonderful. So 78, that already means that is like already almost 50 years ago. So if we're talking about heritage, I mean something that is already 50 years old, and I can guess that this tape, maybe they printed 500 copies of it, 200 copies, 300 copies. It depended on how famous the guy was and how popular the specific album became.
Yeah. So what he did, later on, he reproduced that album, Stiwa Chomusajja.
Yeah. So of course, certain albums became popular and they would be reprinted and reprinted. So we have no real clue of all these tapes, how many were printed. But what I can still guess by looking at them and the oldness of the covers, you can see that the covers have suffered a bit because of the time passing. But I think I have enough knowledge now that when I see a thing, I can kind of guess that maybe not so many have been printed of this one, or definitely there were not thousands made of these tapes. It was the same with the records. Most records, they printed 200-300 copies of one record. If it was a hit and it came in the top 10, then maybe they reprinted another 300. But there's very few records in Uganda that reached beyond 2,000 records. I can count on two hands the number of artists that succeeded in selling more than 2,000 copies of a record. So that gives an indication, you know, like so if you find tapes, then you know, like, oh, these things are quite rare, you know. It's not like there's thousands of them. There's probably only a few hundred left, and then you had conflict in the 1970s, in the 80s. So a lot of these tapes also got lost. Now, good enough with most tapes, they're probably produced after 1986. So after that, there's not been a terrible conflict in central regions. So probably with the tapes, there's still quite a lot of them around, which is good, you know, for preservation reasons. And but I would say that you should make pictures of all these record covers.
I have the pictures.
And so one day publish that, you know, in a book with information.
So Mr. Mo, one of my dreams is to make a heritage center, and our website is under construction. So maybe from there, if I get some funding, I'll be able to put these things into place.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I think it is also very smart to go and check out museums in foreign countries to figure out, like, so how do you put it nicely together?
Do you know
because you can just put everything on a table, and but you also have to present it in a nice way that the younger generation is also going to be enticed by it. So maybe you also have to think of modern ways of enticing children. Maybe work with headphones, or that you can walk through the whole exhibition with headphones on, and that a voice is telling you the whole story. But anyway, these are just brainstorm ideas, but you have to really try and pick up some good ideas in Nashville and other places. And
that's why I need to tour here and there. Is there the ambassador of yours still the ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Uganda? The one who was at the launch of Banajogo?
No. There's now a new ambassador.
A new one. So, Mr. Mo, we've seen the records. We've seen what. Another thing, Netherlands, is Netherlands a republic?
No, it's a kingdom.
It's a kingdom.
Yeah.
The kingdom of Netherlands has been very vital to Ugandan music industry. Are you aware?
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Well, not so much the kingdom, but just a citizen.
We are going to generalize as a kingdom, because for you are here, you are representing the Kingdom of Netherlands here.
That's true.
And if anything happens to you from here, it will be your embassy, the Kingdom of Netherlands in Uganda,
Yeah.
to come searching for you. So
That's true.
if I say that the Kingdom of Netherlands has been very vital to Ugandan music, I think I'm not wrong.
No.
Because one, the man who invented this,
The tapes.
the tapes in 1963, is a Dutch inventor.
Yeah, it's a Dutch inventor who used to work for the Philips factories. The Philips factories that made lights and made all kinds of appliances, technical appliances. Philips is a very famous brand. Maybe lately not so much anymore, but definitely in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s it was like a very famous brand. You could.
So it is that same man who invented the cassette radio.
Yeah. Cassette tape.
Cassette tape and cassette radio.
I don't think the radio. I
Yeah.
think he only
If you
invented
can't read, if you can't read about him, you see.
Okay.
He invented that. Then Walkman was the first radio to be invented by him. It was a Walkman. And then later on, he went on developing. Then other companies came in.
Yeah.
So that guy was from Duzel. That's maybe pronunciation.
Yeah.
Netherlands. He died in 2021 in March.
Yeah.
And he was buried there.
Yeah. I don't know much about him. I mean, I know that he was living in a village called Duizel, which was a village that fell under the village that I come from. So Duizel was only like 2 kilometers away from my village, and they were under the same mayor and the same municipality. Now, I also just found out when he died that he had lived there as all part of his life, so I didn't know. So it's a nice coincidence, you know, that this guy from Duizel who invented the tape came from my village, so I was quite proud of that.
So another thing, here in Uganda, we had a Dutchman called Paul Kasubi. I don't know whether it's the right pronunciation.
Paul Kessemakers.
Kashmak, the owner of African Queen. He had a record shop. Then, actually, it is that man who brought in cassette tapes and radio cassettes in Uganda, and at first it was through smuggling.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
They were smuggled in.
That was at the end of the 70s when Idi Amin and the world was boycotting Uganda, so it was the only way to get something inside of Uganda.
They were smuggled in by the late Bernardine Subuga. Because
they were related, Bernard Subuga and
they were
Paul
related.
Kessemakers.
He was working for his company. Remember, during those days of Idi Amin, that they reached at a time when he stopped whites from operating from here.
So Bernard Subuga became his front man. I think Bernard and Paul Kessemakers made a deal with each other.
Yes.
Like you, Bernard, you're now going to be the boss of the company.
Yeah, Africa in Transit.
But it was Paul Kessemakers who had put all the money into that company. So I think Bernard also realized, like, but that's not fair that everything is taken away from this Muzungu. So why don't we figure out a way? Because I think they were good friends. I think they were very friendly with each other.
Yeah, they were good friends.
Yeah, and somehow they felt equal to one another, and I think that's why they could trust each other. That as long as Idi Amin was in power, Ben Subuga was officially the boss. And I think Paul Kessemakers was just sitting in the garden, but maybe giving advice to Bernard Subuga about certain things. Because they also had trucks. They also had a transport company.
Africa in Transit.
Yeah, so trucks and went up and down, and so.
And he was supplying the whole of East Africa.
So that Dutch Muzungu was a big guy. He was definitely quite rich, I think. So he was trying to protect his possessions. He didn't flee because he realized he would lose everything then. So I think he took a risk by staying on and figuring out a way together with Bernard Subuga.
Yeah, when I was in an interview with the late Bernardine Subuga, he told me that even the Speak Resort Munyonyo was for that Dutchman.
It was not Speak Resort, but next to Speak Resort there is another garden, and then there is a very big garden, and there's just a gate standing there, and there's nothing happening there. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but it's a very big tract of land, and at this moment I think it's owned by the Aga Khan. And it's that piece of land. That is where this Dutchman, together with an Englishman, I think they were with three, and they were owning what they were calling then Jaja Marina.
Jaja Marina.
And Jaja Marina, I mean, if here was Jaja Marina, then here is what we now call Munyonyo, the resort. And on this left side, you have what they call Cape Town View. Now, Cape Town View is a little hill where there's like three nice houses, and next to it you have that field where there was also that marina called Jaja Marina. And in those three houses, Paul Kesselmakers was also living. So he would be living on this small hill, and down from him there was the marina where the African Queen boat was lying, that he was renting out to people. There were small speedboats that sometimes even Idi Amin used to go to some island that he called his own. And there were lots of performances there. Now at a certain moment that was also taken away from Paul Kesselmakers and from their Englishmen. Idi Amin took it. He also took the houses, and he wanted to use them for, in 1975 there was a meeting of the Organization of African Unity, and he wanted to use that to put presidents there. So he kicked out the Muzungu owner, and but still, after they were kicked out, Jaja Marina became very popular with revelers, you know, the Frigo, the Villa band. There were different bands that would perform there. Almost every evening there would be performed. 100 people would come, but it would be packed there. So that's amazing. If we can find old pictures of that, you know, that would be really nice. So anybody listening or watching, and he might have pictures of specifically that place, you know, Jaja Marina and the performances there, that would be very nice to see. I've never seen any picture of it. I've only heard the stories that many people would come there. And there was another thing also at Jaja Marina in 1975, just before that big meeting whereby Idi Amin would also marry Sarah Cholaba, he also unveiled a statue of himself. I don't know if you've ever seen the pictures of that.
I haven't.
Now those pictures I have, where you see him standing looking at his own image made out of bronze, and it was put there at Jaja Marina. What happened to that statue, if any of the listeners know, please call David Muzungu and tell him where that statue is, because I would also love to see it. And but probably it's thrown in Lake Victoria. I don't know.
Anyway, kale bantu bange nkyali ne muganda wange Mr. Momisho Von Holt, musajja muwandiisi wa bitabo akola entambi ez'ebifaananyi, documentaries ezikwatako music waffe. Tubadde naye wano okumala ebbanga nga tukola omulimu guno. Do you remember how we come to meet?
I can't remember.
You can't remember?
No, I have a very bad memory of first time meeting somebody. I mean, I can remember meetings with you. I mean, we went to Mattia Kakamurizi, we went to Professor Hani Senzua, we went to, so these things I can remember.
Meeting with Mzee Mattia Kakamurizi was our third meeting. Yeah. Because the first time I met you at Robert's place.
Oh, could be. Yeah, could be. Robert Sutumba of Chicago Sound.
Chicago Sounds.
Yeah.
I had gone to pick some music from there. I found you buying records.
Okay, could be. Yeah.
And at first, I remember I just said hi, and you left. So it was Robert who introduced me to you. He said, I'm going to give you the number of that guy. He's much interested in Ugandan country music and you might be rich for him if you get in touch. Then I sent you, I remember I called you direct. Then from there we had some talking. After a few days you came to my place where we had a jazz about this and the other. That's how we met. We met in 2018. At the end of 2018, that's when we met. Then 2019, we made our first 3 projects.
That we did the interviews with the 3, with Bernard Sabuga. Did I send you that clip of Bernard Sabuga that I filmed?
No.
Oh, I will send it to you because that's really nice. Because he's playing. You remember that he was playing a few songs and I recorded them on my phone.
Yes.
And I just discovered them a few weeks ago. I suddenly found them again, because I thought I'd lost them. But I thought I'd send them to you way back, but you can't remember.
I can't remember.
I will send them. You will be happy.
I'll be happy if you resend.
I will do that.
Be happy, and now I'm having enough gadgets for keeping those items. I keep them here. I keep them up.
Yeah, very good.
I'm starting a heritage, a real heritage.
Yeah, we have not yet really talked about Paul Kessemakers. Maybe I should explain for your audience a little bit about Paul Kessemakers.
Okay.
Because that is interesting.
Baganda bange, Mr. Mo atugamba nti omusajja ono Omudach eyakola ekinene ennyo ku music we Uganda yaleeta wano cassette tapes, yaleeta wano gundi cassette players ng'azikukusa ne gana amayinja yalina company. Was it Serenade?
Serenade Records.
Serenade Records. So Serenade abalaba amayinja gano yalina company ng'ekola amayinja gano ng'egaleeta era abayimbi baffe bangi abayimba myaka egyo bafulumiza ku Serenade. So yali musaale nnyo ng'ateekamu ne ssente. Okay.
Yeah, let me tell audience a little bit about this man Paul Kessemakers. So he came from my country. He came to Uganda in the beginning of the 1950s.
Yes.
To work for an Austin dealership. You know, Austin was a kind of type of car. But of course, while he came here, he also started to develop other businesses. And in the 60s, his businesses grew. And then in 63, there was suddenly also in England and America, pop music suddenly became very popular, and the term teenager was constantly used because it was very young people, let's say between 12 and 18, that became big fans of music, and they also started spending money on music. So for the music industry, this was also an opportunity. So also in Uganda, young people from that age group also started getting interested in music, and they also started buying records, at least if they had the money to do so. But there were of course children of middle class families here that could afford that. And at a certain moment, Paul Kessemakers realized there's money in this, because he was a real businessman, a typical Dutchman, very business orientated, and he decided to go and import 150 jukeboxes from Germany, from the brand Serenade. And when they were imported, he made sure that they were placed in Kampala, in Masaka, in Gulu, in all the major towns. And he made sure also, in typical Dutch fashion also, that he would deliver quality, you know, and service. So it meant that if you had a bar in Gulu and you had a jukebox standing there, and a jukebox was a thing you could put like 50 small records into that machine, and then with letters and numbers you could choose certain songs, and then the machine would take out that one record and put it on the record player, and then the needle would go onto it, and then it would play that song. Because some people might not know what a jukebox is, so it's important to explain.
Do you have a copy of a jukebox?
In my film Bwana Jogo, there's even a jukebox playing.
But there is a certain guy there in Bryce. He's selling those things. Maybe one day, one time.
But let me just finish that story. So he brought in 150 jukeboxes
and distributed them
all
over Uganda.
And you would have to pay 1 shilling you could get 2 or 3 songs out of the machine. So it was a good business. He was making good money with that, and then at a certain moment he realized that the records that he puts in there, that they were mainly made by companies from Kenya. So he was thinking, but can't we make these things ourselves here in Uganda, because now it's Kenyans making money out of records that are sung by our own artists. So then he came up with a label. There were a few Ugandans before him that started a record label. Paul Kesselmakers was not the first one. There's Andrew Chembade, who is still with us, and he, I think, with Steven Sempasa and a few others, are really the pioneers when it comes to bringing out music on a Ugandan record label. But Paul Kesselmakers very quickly came after them. I mean, maybe half a year after, he also launched his Serenade record label, because he reasoned, when I have my Serenade jukeboxes everywhere, if there's also mostly Serenade records in that machine, then I'm making money out of my jukeboxes, I'm making money out of the records. So he was trying to cover the whole value chain. Now, between 62 and 68, Ugandan musicians were arguing with each other about creating a studio, but somehow every time it didn't work out, you know, or people were not agreeing, or people were not trusting each other, but then in 68, I think Paul Kesselmakers had been watching this and seeing like, this studio is not coming. Now musicians have to go to Kenya to go and record. Again, it's a loss of money to have to go all the way to Kenya, and so he decided, let me also start a record studio.
I remember during our interview with the late Bernardine Suga, he told us they used to move on, for him he was a policeman, so he would leave here on Friday and make sure that by Monday morning he's back on duty. So they had that challenge.
So you're wasting a lot of time just to record a record. So if you could do that in Kampala, so that's why Paul Kesselmakers in 68, after seeing others struggling to create a studio, he did it. He just pushed in the money, and he was the only owner, you know, because if you have 5 owners, it's also difficult to come to some kind of agreement. So sometimes it's better that there's one owner, he puts all the money and he's the big boss, and from that moment onwards, the Serenade label and the URA label,
Uganda Record Agents,
those became the 2 biggest labels in Uganda. And then Kagabe came, which was owned by a Ugandan. Now that was also a pretty big label, but like probably the 3rd biggest label after those 2.
Maybe even what you forgot to tell our viewers, that there was Opera Tom Tom, but it was not, it came from abroad. Then they brought a branch here. It had its outlet was on Market Street. Then with a company in the industrial area. That's true. And Opel Tom Tom existed for 4 years, and in those 4 years they printed at least 5 million records. So that is an enormous amount of records. I remember, do you remember the other story which the late Bernardine Suga told us, that the late Christopher Antegi Sebadika used to have 3 days in a week to come and sit at the outlet shop of Opera Tom Tom for people interested in records to come and at least see him. He used to act as a display. So that
who was that? Christopher who?
Christopher Antegi Sebaduka.
Oh, Sebaduka, yeah.
And people used to come see him. When he seated there, then they got by the records.
Interesting. So he was almost like personally selling his own records.
And maybe if we are still talking about records, the first Ugandan record label to be owned by a Uganda was Busula. Do you know Busula?
Busula label, I know.
Was based in Jinja. And that guy was from Busula, Arongo.
But he was called Kamya, wasn't he, the owner of that Busula company? Kamya,
So,
but I don't think that he was the first one. He might have been the first one in Jinja, but the first one in Kampala, who owned the records label, was Endu Chambade and Steven Sempasa. They are really the first ones that really had a label of their own. The only difference is that they didn't, although Steven Sempasa, he had a label called Serena,
Yeah.
like a yellow label, and it's even here, I think.
I've seen one. It's
yeah, it's this one, but you don't see it properly. But yeah, so that was quite a big label. I think he brought out in 2 or 3 years' time maybe 30 small discs. The label of Anu Chambada was called Sweet Voice. That only brought out maybe 10. But the Serenade label of Paul Kersenmakers, the Dutch guy, he brought out under Serenade at least 140 records. And under the URA label maybe 90. So you can clearly state that in the 1960s and the beginning of the 70s that Paul Kersenmakers was the musical kingpin.
Okay.
He had the whole value chain in his hand. So I'm not saying that that's per se something positive, but he was definitely a smart businessman. So from the song being created up to it being pushed in a shop, he had it all. You know, he had a shop, he had the studios, he had the labels. So, yeah.
Okay.
Big guy.
So baganda bange ekintu omwami ono kyagezaako okwogera tekyawukana nnyo na kintu kyengendo banyumizaako nti abasajja bano abalinanga amatundiro ga music be bafoominganga wane ebibiina be bafoominganga ebibiina by'abayimbi nti akeera n'atandikawo edduuka erifulumya music n'akeera n'akola ekyuma oba studio ekwata music tikati wamala okugira okukwata music akwatidde bayimbi be bano ate n'amala n'agenda n'abateeka mu dduuka lye kati nga okubakuŋŋaanya obulungi abakolera kibiina. Do you know what I'm talking about? We had Uganda Music Publishers Association. Those guys were very creative. Actually, what they did during their time, they formed music groups in Uganda. So the reason as to why they formed these groups, it's the other reason why Paul Kasumeka did that, because they had studios. Then studios, after making studios, what they need next is customers. Who are the customers? Are the artists. Yeah. So for them to manage these artists, they had to form groups.
Yeah, which is smart, and I agree with you.
So that if you more MC Benoit, I David, we under a certain management. Let me say this is Kasaja and Sons Emporium. Kasaja and Sons Emporium formed the Peking Festac. Those were two groups, and he made sure that for every member of Peking Festac had to record music from his studio, and that those records made from Kasaja and Sons Emporium would go to his shop.
Yeah, exactly. So they did the same as what Paul Kasumeka did, having the whole value chain in your hand, because then you make the most money out of the product.
Yes.
So it was a very smart way of doing things, and maybe Paul Kasumeka was a bit of an example that they saw, like, hey, wait a minute, look at this. We are arguing with each other and we're not coming to a conclusion. Then the Muzungu jumps away with actually the same idea, and then people woke up and say, let's stop arguing, we better work together.
That was a simple logic to protect their market.
Yeah, because otherwise Paul Kersenmakers would have taken everything and then nobody would have had any share of the cake,
You see this one, this record, this cassette tape is by Zira Guitar Singers. Bazira Guitar Singers. Abakyala ba Nantawunyikamu Volume 3. This Nantawunyikamu was a second group of Bazira Guitar Singers owned by Katose and Wilson Kwita. So he formed this group and is the one who recorded this tape. Then after recording this tape, he took it to Kase Music Recorders shop. He would sell it from his shop. For you who needs a copy, would go to his shop. And during that time, it was prohibited to reprint. And it wasn't easy for someone to make a print out of that copy.
Because they would easily find out who is the culprit making illegal copies.
Yes, what they used to do is to make other branches. For example, in Iganga we had Mokembo. Mokembo was there in Iganga. He used to buy copies from these other shops and had a big shop selling on behalf of these other companies in the central.
So it became a pretty well-oiled machinery, isn't it?
Yeah, we had HK Hassan Kasule. HK is the one who formed, he formed the Rukwata Advanced of Livingstone Kasozi, then Kabula, the professional singers, so that these guys would go to his shop to record, then after they sell him the copies, so that he distributes to the public. So anyway, that's it. So baganda bange nchaine Mr. Mo, we are about to conclude. We are about to conclude, and I think it has been nice meeting you. We've never got a chance of looking into a camera, sharing a story together. We've been on phone, maybe face-to-face, physical chat, but at least we are in a digital world, and we need to keep these things. After here, I'm going to upload a copy on YouTube, and I'll give you a copy. Maybe you can share that copy with other people. So, what really made you get interested in Ugandan country, in Ugandan music?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, that of course I was already for many years very interested in African music in general. And I had been collecting already a lot of records when I was still living in the Netherlands. So coming here, it was kind of obvious. I come from a family where all my brothers are making music. Okay, I don't play any instruments, but back in the day I used to sing a bit, compose a few songs. So it has always been in my head. But then somehow I felt that my talent was more in writing, and so I deviated into that direction. But music, has always been in my life, and also in the lives of my brothers. So I grew up with that. So I think it was obvious. And why then specifically Ugandan music? Maybe if I would have moved to Zambia, I would have done that in Zambia. But here in Uganda, somehow, because certainly when you look at the history of records of Uganda, it's not like there is too many of them. I mean, it's somehow possible to try to find out which records were all produced. Now, I've been able up to now to find maybe 70% of all records ever produced in Uganda. I think I know the names. I don't have all these records, but I have the names through research, through people that had records. And so, what drives me, I mean, it's also a bit crazy, to be so fixated on records. But what I like so much about it is it's not just a song, whereby you can dance on. There are lyrics, and these lyrics, certainly the Kadongokamu lyrics, if you start listening to them, and in my case, when somebody translates them for me properly, then a world opens for me, like I start understanding Ugandan society much better to listen to these songs and know what they're about.
Okay, so I'm going to give you another question. Over lyrics and instruments, what comes first into your mind?
Well, to me, I think because any song that I listen to here, I don't really know immediately. I hear a few words that I can guess what they're about. So to me, I guess the music attracts me first. The music and the melody of the voice, without knowing exactly what they're singing about. But of course, I had 300 songs translated, so of those songs, when I hear them, I know what they're singing about. So I do have a clear grasp of that, and I mean, of course, the lyrics are important. I mean, the lyrics are very important. Certainly, when it comes to the Kadongokamu artists. Other artists, the more rumba style songs, are sometimes too much about love, love, you know, and lots of repetition of the same words, and so lyrically that is a bit boring. But the music of the bands is, of course, better than the Kadongokamu artist, because he's just sitting there with one guitar, so you run the risk of monotony a bit, you know, which is there, although you can also say it's not monotony, but it's just almost like a trance-like music that you get into a trance if you listen to the repetitiveness of these songs. I have no problem with repetitiveness, you know. I can just get into the mood of that song, and I don't care that for 5 minutes he's kind of repeating the same chords.
Okay, Mr. Mo, another question. You've managed to travel to different countries in Africa. You've ever been to Congo?
Yeah.
You've ever been to Ghana?
Which one?
Ghana.
Ghana, yeah. I've been to Ghana, I've been to Eritrea, I've been to Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, Togo, what else? Yeah, it's not that I traveled tremendously much, but just enough.
At least you've traveled.
Yeah,
we have people who have never even reached the borders of their country.
Yeah, it's true.
So, according to you, you've managed to travel to those countries. Here in East Africa, we have Congo, we have Tanzania, Kenya, Eritrea, Ethiopia. Which one is the best when it comes to music?
Yeah, that is a difficult question. That's, you know, every country has its pearls and its beautiful music. I mean, I like the Ethiopian music.
Yeah, in this question, you are going to combine reasons, then you outweigh, and you come up.
I know, but that's really difficult. That's really difficult, because I like the music of all those countries. But of course, my heart lies a bit with Ugandan music, because I have been diving into it that much over the years that, of course, I have a love relationship with Ugandan music. I cannot deny that. So, of course, any time I find a new old Ugandan record, you know, it's like a child, you know, a lost child I found. So I have an emotional connection with the music in Uganda, but I don't have an emotional connection with the music in Kenya or in Eritrea or in Ethiopia, because I was there too shortly, so I don't feel that connection with the country. But it doesn't mean that the music is not good. I mean, in Ethiopia they make wonderful music, you know, and technically great and jazzy and you name it. And so, and in Kenya also, you know, especially in the 70s, there was great music being made.
But are you aware that Kenya is the mother country of music in East Africa?
Probably, because I think that's when it comes to modern music, not to traditional music, because there's always been music in Africa, but I mean, we now call that traditional music. That music has always been there, and then I think the music from the Baganda can compete with any other ethnic group in the whole of Africa. That music is haunting, and when you listen to these traditional Baganda songs, I mean, some of them are just, and the singers, they loudly sing out, you know, they're not so careful as the Kadongokamu singers in most cases. So I'm also mesmerized by that sound, you know, by the traditional sound, especially of the Baganda music. It is really amazing. So I wouldn't say that the Kenyan music, the traditional music, is better than the one from here. But when you talk about the modern music, that came about after the Second World War, then I think that the quality in Kenya was higher, because they always had a studio, they always had better opportunities than the Ugandans, except for the 4 years that Opel Tom Tom was here, because they also had a recording studio those 4 years. But that's the bad luck for the Ugandan musicians. That factory should never have gone, because that would have elevated the Ugandan music industry enormously if that factory would have stayed there. But the factory actually left because of anger of Baganda activists that were tired of Asians and Bazungu having businesses in Uganda. So in 1959 they started a strike, you know, almost a year-long strike, and that forced that factory, that Opel TomTom factory, to close because they were not making any money anymore, because it was kind of boycotted. And that's the reason why that factory stopped being in existence. And the effect that had on the Ugandan music industry is quite big, I think, because if suddenly there's not a factory in your own country anymore, you know, you have to go to Kenya. What are the costs, you know, the travel cost? You have to sleep there one night.
Risking life.
Even risking life, and also being intimidated by a new city. It would have been so much better if a Ugandan artist wakes up in the morning from Mango, he walks through the streets proudly because he feels at ease in Kampala, walks to the Opel TomTom recording facility, you know, proudly sings his songs. You know, I mean, in many different fronts, it would have really benefited the Uganda music industry, but it didn't happen that way. Okay. And it's just the way it is.
Okay, nkyali ne Mr. Mo Michel Boniot, omusajja omuwandiisi ku music waffe owa Kadongokamu ne music oli ow'emyaka giri ng'agase band ne Kadongokamu. Mr. Mo, I'm going to ask you another question. Why is it that music of modern days is no longer sweet as music of the late? In the past, technology was still down, but they produced quality music. Now we have technology, but music is no longer sweet compared to the past.
This is, of course, partly a personal opinion, that you think it's sweet and not sweet, and so I have to admit, I mean, I am agreeing with you, but I also have to say that I don't want to downplay the music of today either, you know. I mean, I think musicians these days, also singers, they try their best, you know, to come out with something beautiful.
Are you aware that even these artists of nowadays, if someone needs a hit, he has to go to music of the past, picks some lyrics and puts into his.
Yeah.
Of recent, we've been having this song of your friend Gerard Mukasa, Nabata, has trended.
Yeah, wonderful.
Has crossed borders. I've seen whites making challenges out of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Great.
Out of Nabata. But I'm not so sure if in 20 years' time from now we shall get such a chance of some people rejuvenating music of now in the future.
Yeah, that is something you can never look in the future, but I do believe that this Nabata song definitely proves that a lot of young people like that song. Because why? Because if you listen to the lyrics, this is funny lyrics.
Where did that creativity go?
Sorry, where did
that creativity
come from?
Go
to, yeah. Somehow I think partly this is also political, you know, that somehow talking too much in a microphone might not be smart. So there is a level of intimidation that started, I think, especially under Idi Amin. You know, now a lot of these Kadongokamu artists under Idi Amin, they would sometimes write songs of which they knew that would please Idi Amin. The anti-miniskirt songs, maybe negative songs about women.
Praise songs.
Yeah.
Do you remember that time of praise songs for Idi Amin Dada?
There were very many.
Abusing Apromitoni Obote.
Yeah.
Anyway. Tukyalina muganda wange tukyanyumya mwetunyumya mujja kunsonyiwa abamu olulimi lugatta abamu terugatta naye tujja kubeera nga tuva kubanga fena tuli omuntu omu. So we were still talking about your music, that why is it no longer sweet? Is it the same thing in your country? For you, have you
No,
kept that
I mean,
pace?
no, because I think that musicians in my country are more free. So they're more free to express themselves. Since the Second World War, there's only been growth in how you can express yourself. There's never been a point that government is telling you, no, you can't sing this lyric, we're going to stop you. Maybe, once every 4 or 5 years there's one song because it's just going too far, and so it might have been stopped, because it calls for violence or something. But furthermore, I mean, songs are not being scrutinized like that, and here there is definitely, since the 1970s, musicians have started looking in the mirror and be more careful with what they say and what they sing.
Is the instrumentation in Netherlands that of the past?
There is still a lot of musicians that really play with guitars, with drums, with saxophones. It's still very popular. It's not that the keyboard or the computer has taken over. But of course there's also music being made just like here, where everything goes through a computer.
Because for us here, we were these cassette tapes or records were done on. We call it piga twende kuba tugende. Piga twende, the artist is performing or singing, or at the same time the instrumentalists they are playing their instrument. That's piga twende.
Okay.
Could it be one of the reasons as to why the instruments of nowadays is no longer sweet? Because now we are programmed, we are having programmers.
Well, the programmers, what they do, what they get out of the computer sounds perfect. There's no mistake in it.
Yes, they sound perfect.
Yeah. But in the 70s, these guys, when they went into the studio, they had rehearsed it like 3 weeks, 2 or 3 songs, and when they stood in the studio, nobody could make any mistake, because if any of the 7 or 8 or 9 people would make one mistake, you had to overdo it again.
Yeah.
But it also meant that maybe sometimes a very small mistake they would just let it in, and because of that, sometimes these old records don't sound so perfect.
Don't you think that gave them a chance of perfection?
No, it does.
When I've seen a number of artists of nowadays, they can't perform live.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And these guys from the 70s, they rehearsed every day.
Yes,
5 days a week, then 3 evenings of performing.
Practice.
Yeah,
which brought perfection.
Yeah, it goes very quickly, and sometimes you wonder. I mean, can you produce a song that quickly? Will that really be good? Is there not some? I'm also not a fan of this way of making music through a computer, but I also don't want to, because maybe I'm just old-fashioned, and maybe I'm just stuck in these old days, and that's what I like. And but I can appreciate certain songs that come out also and say, but that's really a good melody. Some of these guys that make songs in Nigeria, I mean, some of them, you can hear that they are making these songs based on the juju style, or you can see that they are trying to go back in time and pluck a few things. What I would like to see is that more artists here start to listen to the old Kadongokamu style and say, why can't we pick some elements out of that and put that into our new melody? And yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mo. Another question before we conclude. You've got a chance of meeting a number of Ugandan artists, also our legends who were there in the other years.
Yeah.
Who is your best artist?
Who is my best artist?
In country, those who did Kadongokamu.
Who did Kadongokamu? I think I like Bernard Sabuga the most.
You like Bernard Sabuga?
I'm not saying that the others are not really good. Christopher Sabuga is really good. Mattia Kakamnizi is really good. But there's something about Bernard Sabuga when he sings. There's so much emotion in his voice. And also lyric-wise, I feel that there's a liberal mind that he has. That he has got a good look on life that I agree with. Because I'm not agreeing with all these Kadongokamu artists, what they're saying. That doesn't mean I cannot appreciate them, but I'm not always agreeing when you sing an anti-miniskirt song. I'm not agreeing with that. I think a woman should be free, you know, to wear a miniskirt. But that's my personal opinion. And songs talking negatively about women as if they're all prostitutes. You had those songs also.
Okay.
And I think it was Idi Amin allowing that. He wanted those kind of songs to come out, you know, because he wanted to have women under his thumb. And that's something I personally cannot agree with. So, indeed, you know, music is something very personal also. You like things, and in that sense, I think Bernd Sebuga was, I think, a person that thought further than just, you know, the simple things. He was daring. He dared to say something, while in general people were saying, no, now you have to sing songs that are negative about women. That is the way you have to sing now. And Bernd Sebuga, I think, stood his man, and he said what he really thought.
Kale, Mr. Magamba nti mu bayimbi ba Kadongokamu ye interested mu babasudde tatuukayo mu ba Prince Jopo Kafero ne Sebata ategeera oli ow'emabega oli owasaamu wange ojja eno abo tabategeera bulungi, naye agamba nti mu bayimbi b'e Uganda ategeera omwami eyatandika okuyimba mu mwaka gwa 1964 omugenzi Bernard Nsubuga Ssemango yafa emabegaawo mu mwaka gwa 2022 twamuziika wali e Busukuma wano ku Lweziroobwe. Kale oyo gwagambye ngenda mubuuza ekibuuzo okay, kale baganda wange tukyayongerayo Bernard Nsubuga Ssemango omusajja oyo be baatandika ekibiina kya Uganda Picking Guitarist mu 19 ne Kakumirizi ne Paulo Damulira, era we batyo beesitula ne bakunga bannaabwe ne bakola omukago ne Government Ministry eya Culture ne bakola Kadongokamu and Culture Company mu 1971 okutuusa mu 1979 Government ya Idi Amin Dada bwe yagibwa mu buyinza, Apollo Milton Obote n'akomawo mu buyinza mu 1980, era ekiyiganya bayimbi kyaliwo kinene obudde obwo nga bayiga abo abakola zi praise songs, ennyimba ezaali ziwanaamini nga zivuma gavumenti ya Apollo Milton Obote ng'omuntu, era ne gavumenti ye eyaliko emabega eyawamba Ssekabaka Edward Muteesa. Kale nkyali ne Mr. Mo naye tuli mu kusiibula tufunzafunza ate tubalekere ebirala. So Mr. Mo, we have what we call a cappella.
A what?
A cappella.
A cappella?
Yes. Do you have any cappella for any Ugandan country music?
No, I'm very bad at remembering lyrics.
At least give us what you have.
But I don't have anything, Dave. Don't ask me to sing.
Anything,
you are allowed to sing.
At
you
least,
guys like to be singing.
Even if three words. Even if 3 words. About maybe from your favorite lyrics.
Lyrics from any country.
Yeah, any country, Ugandan country.
Oh, here in Uganda.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's difficult. That you know, because I'm very bad in Uganda. So
no problem.
I'm just going to make a fool
People
of myself.
will understand. Yeah, people will understand because it's the thing like me. If I go to
no, but I find it difficult to really remember these Luganda lyrics, so it's going to be very, very difficult for me to even remember one. You know, I mean, I can tell you anything about I mean the lyrics of a song, but they are English lyrics, so they're not the Luganda lyrics. So I think you have to give me a song because I can't do it. I'm sorry.
For me, I was like, you fought Christopher Ntegesebaduka.
Yeah, but I cannot sing any of these lines.
Any of his lines?
No, because I don't focus on that, you know. Like I know the song Teresa, but I know what it's about. But I have no clue how the lines are.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
Since you don't know, you know how it flows, but you can't sing. Many of us, we have such problems. I myself, I know a number of songs, but I'm very poor.
Like me, so
yeah. So that's why.
So you're also dodging.
That's why we are brothers.
That's good. We dodge that, and the audience has to sing for themselves.
Maybe to replace a cappella, what you are going to tell us? You are going to talk about Teresa Owebinedene.
So about
Teresa's
song.
Yes.
What I can tell about the Teresa song is that it was composed in the 1950s, at the end of the 1950s, and that it became a very popular song. It was sold many, many times. It was released also, I think, at least 3-4 times over a time period of 14 years. And according to newspaper articles that I found, more than 80,000 copies of that record were sold in Uganda.
More than 80,000.
More than 80,000.
And copies kanaana
yeah.
zaatundibwa mu luguudo mu jjinja erya Teresa owa Ebineden.
And I'm told you before that a big hit that I could count on 2 hands, maybe like 8 songs that sold more than 2,000 or 4,000 copies. There's one Eklas Kawaya song, I can't remember the title, but I think it sold also around 10,000 copies. But 80,000 copies, so you can imagine. That's why I'm calling Christopher Sebutu the king of Kadongokamu, because that song sold so many copies. So yeah, that man is very special.
Okay. Who is your favorite in band?
Band music in Uganda?
Yes.
I think it's the Cranes.
The Cranes.
Yeah, that is because I made a film about them. I've become too personally involved with members of the Cranes, and so yeah, there lies my allegiance.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like the Ranzoris also very much. They also made 2 very beautiful albums. The Thames was also an amazing band. So they just played different kinds of styles, so you can't really compare. It's like comparing the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
Yes,
like they play different music, so they're both great. So I rather choose for both than being forced to choose for one, you know.
Okay.
So the same applies to that those 3 bands were just, yeah.
Then internationally?
And internationally, yeah, then it's really the Beatles. That is my favorite band in the whole world.
Any cappella?
Any
cappella from the Beatles?
Yeah, there of course I know lots of songs. Let me see if I can find a good one. Imagine all the people living life at ease. And then I can't go so high, but at least you have 2 lines from me singing.
Okay.
A very famous song, Imagine.
What were...
A more beautiful world, you know. I'm always into for that. I'm not into the world of you telling me, oh, you can't do this. No, I'm forbidding you this. No, I don't accept the way you behave. You know, I'm not telling you how we should behave, David. If you behave in a way that I'm not agreeing with, I might just tell you that I'm not agreeing with it, but I'm not going to make up rules to force you to, you know, I don't like all this forceful stuff. I think we should walk a middle way, and if we disagree about something, I'd rather sit down with you, have a cup of tea, and I'm trying to explain to you why I think it's not good that you, I don't know, I can't think of anything, but that you do something that I find wrong, you know, in the eyes of God or in the eyes of morality. But that's the way you should solve these things, you know. First become friends with somebody, and then you also have a say in that other person's life without forcing him. But when I don't know you and I start making rules for you and I say, no, I don't want you to meet any girls with miniskirt, or otherwise I'm going to put you in prison or whatever, you know. No. I mean, you know, a human being should be quite free. I'm not saying that you should be free to kill somebody, but there is minor things that I feel that I should let you free and you should let me free, and we find a middle way in trying to understand each other's opinions. I think that will also bring Uganda much further if many people would think like that, instead of, you know, condemning this group or condemning that group, and they're going to be the scapegoats for all the misery that Uganda is suffering from, you know.
Okay. Mr. Mo, is there should we hope that one day, one time, you start writing some books about these guys who made music on cassette tapes? Because in this you majored on records.
Yeah. The plan is to make part 2, because this one is 1962 to 1979. And that is the era of the records. And indeed, the second phase is the cassette era from 1980 up to 2000.
Up to 2000.
But there's a lot of work, you know, so I have to first find the energy again to start
and here,
working on it.
You need a lot of energy if you are to do this, because you find you find a song going to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, then translating.
It's costly. It's time consuming.
It can take you. It can take you a day.
Yeah, but it's worth doing, and so I will definitely start part 2 because I think people are happy with part 1. So
if one needs this copy, where can he or she get it from?
Yeah, at the moment they are sold out.
They are sold out.
So you've almost got the last copy now, because I went to the bookshop and there's no more copies. So the printer has to print new copies, but the book is available also as an e-book. I don't know if your people are into e-books.
We can at least you can use some 30 minutes to teach them about e-books.
Yeah.
How it works.
Yeah. You know, in e-book you need to have an e-reader, so maybe that's not the easiest way of getting the book. I think what the best is that at the moment that the publishers publish new books, I will let you know, and then maybe on your Facebook page you can tell the people like, oh, you know, the book is out again.
Okay.
But 600 copies were sold.
See?
600 copies.
600 copies.
In 2 years' time.
In 2 years' time.
So that
how much
says something.
Is a copy?
And one copy is 80,000 shillings.
8,000 Ugandan shillings. 550
pages.
Let me see.
Or around 550.
538.
Yeah.
38. And let me try to go through a bit. Bantu bange ngezaako kulaba. Tubagamba nti tutera okukola ebintu bino. Agamba nti, but I would like to thank the following people: translators Jack Wabuti, Rugisho Swahili, Dennis Slice Anguzi Swahili, Dan Sentamulu Soga, Robert Chimera Kakande Church Anthem, Frank Gooderson Swahili.
Yeah, but the main translations were done by Mike Musoke.
The
singer of Percussion Discussion Africa. He translated like 98% of all the songs. Here I just say because there's a few songs that he could not translate because he doesn't speak Swahili and he doesn't speak Lugisu. So that's why I mentioned a few more. But the main person is really Mike Musoke.
Okay, kati muganda waffe Mr. Mo mu kitabo kino agamba interviewed for a book, agamba mwalimu Ali Chama, Amani Ramadhani, Andrew Chambadde, oyo omwami muyimbi akyaliwo, ye yali omwami wa Margaret Kibuuka, Anthony Magoti Ngogo, Bernard Nsubuga Mugenzi tubadde tumwogerako, yali muyimbi wa Kadongokamu Birigwa Waswa, CEO wa FDC.
Yeah. Birigwa Waswa. Yeah, big man of...
Yes. Naye yali muyimbi.
A very great singer. Birigwa Waswa he went to America in the beginning of the 70s and made a very beautiful album there.
Then ndabamu Clyde Mayanja, David King, Degros ya Sebuguzi, abo bonna ogenda basangamu. Kati aina all these experts abantu beyamenya mu kitabo kino, asookera ddala ye David Muzungu, John Sentong, the late, yali aweereza Sweet Melodies ku Sapienza. Then ne muganda waffe naye yafa omwaka ogwo Lutaya Semwanga, Robert Bwile, Robert Setumba, oyo muganda wange Chicago Sound, ne Segirinya Simon Sejiko. So we tubagamba nti tugezezaako okubeera nga tukola emirimu gino, nga tugezaako okubeera nga tugasa ensi, omuntu ayinza okulowooza nti tuogera kubeera nga tweyisaako. So Mr. Mo, say a word of bye-bye.
I'm very happy to have been a guest of David Muzungu. I am very happy with the work he does. Over the years I've seen that he has real passion for Kadongokamu music, and I think he's an example for many people. This is the way you should try to engage yourself in life, you know, with passion, with zeal. And in the beginning I don't think he was making any money at all, but he was still biting his teeth into this Kadongokamu history and the music, and now I really applaud him for that, and let him continue, and let me hope that he succeeds in all his goals in creating a center for Kadongokamu music, and I think it will be in good hands with him. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, baganda bange oye muganda wange Mr. Mo, once again thank you for a book.
Kale, it's a pleasure.
And for the recognition, because for us here in Uganda we doesn't do that.
Yeah, but I also
we don't
know.
Acknowledge.
Yeah, but I also know that people do recognize each other. Also, I mean, some don't, some do. I think there's also good people that do recognize and that do praise certain people. But anyway, I'm agreeing with you. It's always important to put the names of people that helped you in your book or whatever it is. You know, you have to always acknowledge the people that help you, because that's the honest way. That is, you know, the people help you, so how can you not put that name there? So I hope that also the listeners and the viewers will realize, yeah, that is the way to do things. I mean, it's not nice to grab something for you and I'm not acknowledging you.
Yeah, we need to own the praises.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, bantu bange ngezezaako olunyanyimbe mpola mpola bwe ntyo ne muganda wange Mr. Mo, ku kamera tubaddeko ne MC Benwa yabadde akwata ebintu bino. Mbasaba tutambulire wamu mugoberere Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Abagala ennyimba musobola otusanga Kasubi ku Basookakwavula stage wenkolera emirimu gino. Wesitula nojja oluyimba nduterako nusu 5 ntandikira ku nnyimba za 15, oba olwagala ano ku WhatsApp nduterako nusu 10 ntandikira ku nnyimba za 15. Enkola ekusingira obwangu gye tukozesa. Nze Muzungu David, ate n'omulundi omulala tulabagane nga nkomyewo ne emboozi endala. Kino kye kitabo kya muganda waffe Mr. Mo, The Soul of Uganda Through Song. Ekitabo kino yawandiika nga atunuulira music eyafuluma wakati wa independence 1962 okutuuka ku 1979. Then ye mwenyini ye yakiwandiika, then Mike Musoke n'akola translation. Kale agamba nti ekitabo kino copies zaggwaawo, naye bagenda kuddamu bafulumye copies endala wezinaaba zituuse katale agenda kuntegeeza mbategeeze. Banaye twetanire nnyo okusoma, twetanire nnyo okunoonya ku bintu, kubanga tubeera ku TV, radio n'emikutu emirala, naye bannaffe betubeerako betugoberera oba oliawo ojja kusanga batono abalina obudde obubeera nga basobola okukwata ebintu bino. Ebigambo bye tunyumiza ano nti babinyumye. Jjukira tuli mu media business. Abantu obudde buno batunuulira sente mmeka eziyingidde ku station yabwe oba ku account zaabwe. Batono nnyo abagenda okutunuulira. Muzungu David andeetedde kyangatako ki. Wakiri bajja kubawo enjiziri ennyimba bubblegum music okusinga bino. Kale nkubiridde wano mbadde n'omugenyi wange Mr. Mo Hot, musajja ava Netherlands, naye nga wano abaddewo emyaka 22 ng'anoonyereza ku music ono, era tukyakola omulimu. Muyinza okuba temutulaba, naye be bantu ababadde emabega wange mu kukola emirimu gino gyenkola. Tukolaganya ebintu bingi, tuguze kino, tukola ki okulaba nti ekintu kisobola okubeerawo, era bye mulaba nga tukola tutoba butobi kubeera tubikola lwa kwagala. Kale namwe nsaba mutuyambe emboozi zino muzongereyo eri abantu bamwe. Nze Muzungu David, musiibe bulungi, mwera.